this is Ali. Welcome to my channel. If you have subscribed, thank you very much, and if you haven't, please do so and click the bell icon. You'll be notified when I put out my next video. In the descriptions below is my email address if you'd like to email me a question, and there is a link to my channel so you can check out all my other videos. So today I want to talk about negative patterns. So negative patterns we can acquire throughout our life, starting off often as children, and it can be that we've witnessed something as children or have been in a situation that made us unhappy as a child. Could be verbally, could be physically. It could be something that happened to us later on in life, as you know, within relationships with other people. But it just it forms us to have patterns, and we tend to then fall back into the same old patterns. Once we're in a negative pattern process, we tend to fall back in them. Now, negative patterns will make us do things that we normally wouldn't do and make us put up with things that we normally wouldn't put up with. So although we would tell somebody else that they shouldn't put up with something like that, if we are taking on negative patterns, it could keep us in negative relationships and just putting up with these things that we wouldn't normally put up with. Now, these patterns we can break these patterns. They are able to be broken. What we need to do first off is to understand a bit more about the patterns. So when something does happen negative to us and we start to form a pattern on it, our ego likes the feeling of the patterns because it's something that we do over and over again. And so the ego gets used to the feeling safe of being in that pattern. So when we act those patterns out, the ego feels safe and it likes that feeling. It doesn't like change. It doesn't want to feel unsafe. So the ego will push us into staying in those patterns, not because it's good for us, and the ego isn't doing it because it's trying to work against us. The ego just needs to feel safe and secure. And so it pushes us into what it is used to. And because you have been in a place where you keep going back to the same negative patterns and keep doing the same thing over and over again, the ego's got used to that. So that is where it feels safe. When you can break those patterns and then form new positive patterns, the ego again will then feel safe with those because it will go with whatever you kind of have got it used to. So that's what it is that once you get used to something else, the ego will then start to work with you because it will work on a more positive set of patterns as opposed to the negative ones. Now, what we do to try and break these patterns, so the first thing we need to do is we need to acknowledge when something is a pattern. And we can usually tell if something is a pattern because it's not coming from our inner person, it's not coming from our hearts, it's actually coming from our head. And it will be that somebody will have triggered our patterns. So let's say we're in a negative pattern set because of something that happened to us as a child. So let's say as a child we had a parent that didn't show us enough love, or we didn't feel really wanted us to be there. So we could go down a pattern mindset with that, where we will crave love and attention from people. And what we would do is, if those people were, say, treating us badly, we would be so needing of the love and attention that we would not have any boundaries that we should have to put up against being treated badly. So our need to have the love would allow that person to treat us as they want to, and our patterns would keep us in that. Okay, so patterns keep you from putting up boundaries. Okay, so the patterns don't serve us. Okay, they don't serve us in any way, shape or form. They are purely there to basically, because the ego wants to feel safe. So basically we stay in those patterns because we've got used to being in these patterns, and the longer we've done this for, we're just used to them. It's a habit, is all it is really. It's just a habit, and the ego likes us to stay within that habit. So the first thing we need to do is we need to acknowledge what a pattern is. So let's say we know that we've had a pattern that we've possibly done for most of our lives. We probably know where it's come from, or we might have an idea where it's come from, but we know that this is a pattern that we have done for most of our lives. So we need to acknowledge what the pattern is, okay? And then, make ourselves aware that we know that this is just a habit, this is just a pattern, this isn't who we are. This just happens when we get triggered. And you'll find with patterns, they're not with you all the time. You don't think about them all the time, okay? They don't keep coming up, but they'll come up when you get triggered. And you will be triggered by something that takes the thing away from you that you want. So it will be, if your pattern is that you felt unloved as a child, so you're craving love, then your trigger will be when someone removes that from you. When someone takes the love away from you, that's when you will be triggered. And your instinct will be to pull it back, okay? Your trigger instinct is to pull it back. But that, again, like I say, that is your pattern. That is not who you are, and that is not how you should be. Now, once we've figured out what the patterns are, and once we've, acknowledged to ourselves that we know that this is all to do with our ego, and we know that this is just where we've been triggered, and this is just a pattern, what we need to do then is we need to then break the patterns. So the next step is to break them. Now, this is actually easier than what we think, because the first stage in any of this, and the first thing that starts you pulling away from your patterns, is to just acknowledge that something is a pattern. Once you acknowledge something is a pattern, that is one of the biggest steps you'll ever take. Because just by acknowledging it, just instantly stops it from being this massive thing to just this, okay, that's quite normal. Yeah, that's fine. We can deal with that. So you've taken it straight away. You've taken the power away from it. Just by acknowledging what it is, you've just totally taken the power away. And then the next stage is to stop it from happening. So we're then taking our power right back on the next stage, okay? Now what we do is we know that something is a pattern, and we've been triggered, and our instinct would be to try and get it back, to try and pull it back, okay? Now, what we need to do is we do the opposite. So to break a pattern, you do the opposite to what you've always done, okay? And that's all it is. You know what you always do, because it will be the same thing, okay? It will be the same thing you've always done throughout your life, and this could be in groups of friends, this could be in romantic relationships, it could be in family relationships, it could be with anything, but you will find that you have done the same thing throughout your life, whereby you have allowed people to do the same thing to you, to walk over you the same way, okay? So all you do is when someone triggers you, and it could be anyone, it doesn't have to be a big trigger, it could be a really small trigger, but when someone triggers you and you feel that feeling of knowing that you're going into a pattern, and this is a pattern, you do the opposite to what you've always done. So instead of allowing that pattern to take you down the road which you would normally go and do the things you would normally do, no, you step back and you do the opposite, and you put your boundaries up. Okay, you don't allow yourself to be dragged into something that you would normally do. You step back, you consciously do it, okay? You consciously pull yourself back and do the exact opposite. Now, this is hard, okay? I'm not going to say this is easy. It's not easy at all. This is really hard. Once you've got a pattern, and if you've had a pattern for a long time, now I myself had patterns. I had patterns from a very young child. And I had them patterns for a lot of years, before I even knew anything about patterns. So it's not easy, and the longer you've been in a pattern, the harder it's going to be to pull back. And I'm telling you now, it will make you feel terrible. You won't feel good at all. There's nothing good feeling about pulling away from a pattern. It makes you feel awful. I actually personally felt the knot in my stomach was like nothing else. And I would have taken anything to get rid of how my stomach felt. That knot in my stomach was horrendous, and it was horrible, and it made me feel sick, and I felt uneasy. I felt you feel totally off, out of what you would normally feel. Totally as if you're just doing something really wrong. You almost feel like your gut instinct is pulling you back into your pattern. And that isn't your gut instinct, that is your ego pulling you back in. But your ego will use everything it can to hurt you, to get you back in that pattern, okay? Because it's scared, okay? It's not doing this to hurt you, it doesn't mean to hurt you, it's doing it because it's scared. And also as well, what can come into all this is your inner child as well comes into all this, and your inner child is scared. So you've got this massive pull trying to drag you back into staying in the pattern because it feels safe and it feels good, okay? The outcome of staying in the pattern is not good, because all you've done is you've prolonged your patterns for more time, and you've made them bigger again. So like I say, this is going to hurt. When you pull away from a pattern, you're not going to pull away and smile and say, haha, that was easy, because it won't be. There's no way it will be. It will feel horrible, okay? But what you need to do when you feel horrible, your instinct will be to go back into that pattern to make yourself feel okay, okay? That is the instinct that will kick in. It will be, I'll just do it this one more time. It's like an addiction. I'll just do it this one more time and it'll be fine. You know, it's like somebody trying to come off of drugs where they think I'll just have one more hit and it'll be okay. No, you've got to break it. You've got to go turkey on this, okay? So you have to pull yourself away, and that instinct to go back into that pattern is going to be really strong, okay? Because you know that once you go back into that pattern, you'll feel better and you'll feel good. But it's not, it's a short fix. It's not the answer. You have to break the patterns, okay? So, like I say, you pull against this pattern, you do the opposite thing that you've always done. Now, when this starts to feel bad, as like I said, it will feel bad. It's going to feel painful inside. It's going to feel really painful inside. You need to acknowledge that pain. Don't try and mask the pain. Don't try and mask it, because that's just taking yourself into another pattern, okay? Don't try masking it, feel it, okay? You need to acknowledge it. You need to acknowledge, yes, I feel like this. I feel awful. I feel sick. I feel scared. I feel totally out of sorts. I don't feel myself at all. But I know I only feel like this because my ego is trying to pull me back into a pattern and my inner child is scared, okay? And once you can acknowledge that these things are what's going on and that's why you feel how you feel, that will start to break it all down and the feeling will start to go. But don't mask it. You have to acknowledge how it feels, okay? This is part of it. You have to know how that feels. You have to know that that feels bad because of those reasons, and just feel it and just go with that feeling, okay? But then no, you know, this is not your inner being feeling like that. Your inner being will make this okay, and everything will be fine. This is just your patterns. Now, the more times you do this, because you know, if you're like me, there won't just be one pattern. There'll be one or two patterns, maybe a few more that you've acquired, you know, especially from one main pattern that you may have had quite young. There's often other little patterns that have come along. But once you break that main pattern, and the one pattern that you probably will break the first will be the big one, because that will be the one that triggers you quicker. So when you break that pattern, you will find that then when the other little patterns get triggered, they are easy, because you know exactly what to do. You know exactly how to know that this is just a pattern and this is just you being triggered, and you will know exactly how you break it. So you just take a deep breath, and you know whatever you would normally do, you do the opposite, okay? You go through the feeling of not feeling great, and then it all goes away and it feels better. Now, you will find each time you break a pattern, it will start to feel easier and easier. And in breaking patterns, you are forming now your new patterns, because your new pattern is, no, I don't put up with that. This is the boundaries that I've put up. These are my boundaries. If you don't like these boundaries, then, you know, that's it. So you then have formed new patterns, and now your ego will form and will start to relate to those new patterns. So your ego is now no longer working against you, because it's trying to keep you now in the patterns that you've now formed, which are good patterns. These are the positive patterns. These are the patterns that say, I don't put up with this, and I don't put up with that, and I respect myself enough not to put up with that. And actually, I'm worth more than putting up with that. And this is all about changing your self-worth and knowing that you are worthy, and that you are this amazing person. And nobody has the right to make you feel any way other than absolutely amazing. Nobody has the right to do that to you. And And once you start to get into that mindset, these patterns do start to really, really break down. And you'll find once you start breaking them down, you'll feel better each time. You feel empowered each time you break a pattern, because you know you've broken a pattern. I can look back on my patterns now, and I could tell you exactly here and now what patterns I had. And you know, some of them were really hard to break, but I broke them. And I can now see them. I can see them in other people, and I can see them, you know, if they've ever something's come up slightly again, a bit, you know, it never comes up the same, but if it comes up again, I think, oh, that's just that pattern. And it's nothing now, because you just know that you're no longer a slave to those patterns. They're no longer in charge of your life. So this helps as well when you're manifesting, because when we are manifesting from negative patterns, we will manifest people into our existence that will treat us badly because we've allowed them to with the patterns, okay? Because we haven't put up, you know, the boundaries. We haven't got our boundaries in place. So we, in fact, will manifest more of that because we are manifesting from our patterns. And because our patterns are so strong, it's difficult for us not to manifest from our patterns, because they are part of us. And when we manifest from our vibrations, if our vibrations are high, that is when we're in good patterns and when we're not having negative patterns. When we have negative patterns, we are in a low vibration. So we are manifesting more of that, and we are manifesting people, the same sort of people in our life. So if we find that we are having, you know, the same pattern issue with, say, people that we've had in our family, to them people that we've had, say, as friends, to them people that we've had in, say, romantic relationships, we will find that we could be manifesting the same type of people. And that's because those patterns are still there. And so we are manifesting people that are still going to keep us into those patterns. Once we break those patterns, we will then find that people that disrespect us and people that will not respect our boundaries will no longer come into our lives. They just won't. They just will not be able to, because they don't align to us. So they almost can't get in, because the universe will line you up to what you are. So if you are somebody that has boundaries and will not do these patterns and will consciously break their own patterns because they do not want to be treated like this, and they have more respect for themselves, and they have, you know, they feel really, really good with life, they love their life, and actually they just will not be taken back into negative patterns, you will find that the people that the universe will line up to come into your life in all sorts of ways will be the people that are the same as you, and that will have their own boundaries and actually won't be putting up with their patterns and will have broken their patterns. And you'll find that people that are stuck in the old way and are stuck in patterns and can be abusive to other people because of their own patterns, they won't be able to come in your existence, or they will not be predominant in your existence, because they don't line up with you anymore. You have moved, your vibration has risen, and they are on a lower vibration, so they cannot come into your existence. So breaking patterns is a major thing when you are trying to manifest good things, especially when you are trying to manifest relationships with people. And like I say, that's any relationships. This could be work relationships, this could be romantic relationships, it can be any type of relationship. But if you're coming from a place of negative patterns, you are going to keep the same people around you. Okay, you are attracting the same. All right, so you need to be, you know, acknowledging what your patterns are, do the work to break your patterns, and then just see the people that then start to be around you, and you will find out that actually they are coming from the same as you, where they are people that may have had patterns but have broken them and are, you know, really, really high vibrational people. It makes such a difference. It really does. I hope this was helpful, and if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.